Hello, and welcome back to Turnaround Politics. Today, we're going to be looking at Project 538, 2020 presidential elections, and all the information that they have on their little page for the 2020 elections. Let's start off with looking at this cool little graphic that they have at the beginning. Little cute little fox right there. But let's look. It shows some of the states based on the percentages of them winning different times. And one of the most interesting things I think about American politics is that all these Trump wins up here are so much more red than even the most blue wins for Biden. It's just interesting how the Electoral College works, that there's so many 3-vote states that Trump is guaranteed to win pretty much, that make his state, his win look so much bigger when he does win, even though the percentage wise or popular vote wise, it's really not that much bigger, and by Electoral College votes wise, it's not that much bigger. That's just a little latest news, but let's move on down to who's favored to win this election. According to 538, they run 40,000 election scenarios, see who wins the most of the time, and Biden wins about 75 times, 75%. Trump wins 25%. We've seen very similar numbers in 2016. Actually, by the time 2016, by November when the election happened, it was about 30% for Trump and 70% for Hillary Clinton. They do talk about in their methodology, they changed things up since 2016 to make it more accurate, and how they do pride themselves on their methodology, how they come out with election predictions. And they say that they do really, when they have people winning 30% of the time, most of the time, 30% of them win the election. So they've actually gotten pretty good at their election predictions, because 30% of the time is still a significant chance. It's a very decent chance to win the election. You would much rather have the 75% or the 70% than 30% or 75% instead of 25, but that's still, it's not he still has about 2 months left for this election to get more support. A lot of time, voter turnout's a big deal. A lot of stuff happens between that time. But let's look at some of the wins. One of the important factors I think to see in this little graph that they have is Trump never wins by more than 200 electoral college votes. 200 more, if there's a 200-point difference in electoral college votes, that is considered a blowout. And I've done the math over here. 28% or 28 out of his 75 wins for Joe Biden comes over 200 points, which would be a blowout, and he has more wins in these simulated elections. He has more wins of over 200-point margin of victory than Donald Trump has wins total. It's very interesting to see that. He's the only candidate that even gets over 200. He also gets over 400-point difference. He also has simulated elections, that have Biden winning 500 electoral college votes. It's something we have seen in the 80s. It's not something we would probably see this time. Could happen. Very, very, very small percentage. This is probably less than 1% of their election predictions have this happening. There's no way that this really happens. I would say we're more in this more around this mark in this upcoming election. However, I don't think Georgia will be one of those states that goes to Biden. Let's move on down to every outcome in our simulations. It shows the percentage of wins, about over 270 electoral college votes. And while you see Trump, his winning slides down over after it reaches 270. That means the likelihood of this happening is smaller. And then you see a little bump right here, but like really it's just slowly going down and it slows off. Biden's graph is much more interesting in the terms of like studying graphs and stuff, is it doesn't go slowly down like that. It goes one bump after 270, second bump, third bump, then it goes drastically down, and then it bumps again for a lot. I personally don't know what causes that bump. I would assume it's when like he wins all the top, not all the toss-up states, but the major important ones like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Florida, North Carolina, and wins all of those, causing him to be above 400. It will be interesting to see if he gets above 400. That's definitely a blowout win, but it's interesting to see how many spikes that Joe Biden has. Spikes can be caused from like something around this mark, right below 400, not being a very likely number for a candidate to get to anyways, because we don't do it proportionally. So if you win Texas, you win 38%, 38 electoral college votes. So like that can get you from here all the way over to there. That can be something that causes these huge spikes. Now, I don't want to show you all of that right now, but the winding path to victory, this is my favorite part of 538. The winding path to victory shows the vote margins and the tipping points. The tipping points are the states that tip it over 270 for either candidate. It's the state that moves it over. It's the closest state that moves it over 270 for that candidate. It's really interesting to see which states those are. I did an earlier episode on Ohio, and I showed that for Ohio. But let's see the most Republican area, or most conservative for Trump. Nebraska's third. I don't really count that. But like Wyoming is a whole state, 68% of the vote will be going to Donald Trump according to their predictions. A lot of votes. It'll be interesting to see what actual numbers are, but it's nice to see that they do it based on how much of the vote they get. Now let's move. DC is the most votes for Biden with 90.7%. I think Hillary Clinton won this with like 93% of the vote versus Donald Trump's like 4%. Like it was a very one-sided. DC's going Democrat for far into the future. The first state that we have winning is Vermont with 66% to Biden, 31% to Donald Trump. It's interesting to see the states that are super conservative or super liberal, and it's interesting to see. Now let's go to these states. This state, Pennsylvania, is the state that's the closest on the 270 mark. This is Joe Biden's closest state of winning 270. So it's a state that Donald Trump needs to win, the biggest toss-up state that Donald Trump needs to win to get to 270. I'm pretty sure on the other one it is also the biggest tipping point, or the most likely tipping point in the election. 20 votes, significant amount, toss-up state. They have a forecasted vote share of 47.4% for Trump to Biden's 51.8%. This is quite a close election. A lot of rural Pennsylvania is very pro-Trump, and that can really affect these elections. Cities have lower voter turnout than rural areas. A lot of stuff stems from that. Actually, if you guys want me to start a podcast talking about more political issues, please leave a comment in the comments below. But Pennsylvania, the rural vote going to Donald Trump can really help Pennsylvania. Most states going one way or the other, most toss-up states, depends on voter turnout. But based on what 538 thinks, also they do take in their methodology the likelihood of different groups coming out to vote. So I do like their methodology a lot. I've looked at it, I've read it, and it's very well done. So Pennsylvania, 51.8%, I can definitely see that happening. North Carolina, the closest state in this election, they still have going to Biden by only a 0.8% margin of victory, but 50% of the vote in North Carolina would be good for Biden. Now let's move on to tipping points. The state, obviously, that we saw, it's the state that's right here, and it tips over for Joe Biden in their little graph. The most likely tipping point state for Joe Biden is Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin. The significant jump between Pennsylvania and Florida, 30% to 15%, is a very big, significant jump. And then even more to third place with 8.7, and it quickly goes down. There's some interesting states in here, like Nebraska's 2nd district. Not something you would think would be a tipping point, but it is only at a 1.1. New Hampshire, Nevada, Virginia. Virginia is, not even considered a toss-up state this time around. Colorado, considered a toss-up state, but heavily going towards Joe Biden. Arizona, a big toss-up state. Minnesota's almost at like 7% in favor of Joe Biden. Yeah, almost 7%, 6%. That's a very heavy favorite to be a tipping point state. So it's very interesting to see what happens in this election. And all of these are states that have 1% chance. Obviously, California is going to be very low. The states that are heavily one way or the other are obviously going to be low. Texas makes one of the top states. Now let's go down to the chances of winning. We saw that earlier. Let's move to the Electoral College votes. As of September 10th, they have it going towards 328 to Joe Biden, 210 for Donald Trump. Personally, I see it more about right over the 300 mark for Joe Biden come November 3rd, and whatever the difference is for Donald Trump between 303 and 538. But yeah, I still see it's going to be a lot closer than 328, probably like 20 points lower for Joe Biden. But we can definitely see this. It happens. I can be wrong, they can be wrong, both of us could be wrong, but it's going to be around this, I would believe, in November 3rd. Now let's look at the popular vote. The popular vote is much more separated than the Electoral College vote would suspect it would be, with Donald Trump sitting at 46 even, and Joe Biden sitting at a 52.7. It's really interesting. I've seen a graph going around on Twitter about how the chances that Joe Biden wins the Electoral College vote compared to how much of the popular vote he wins. He definitely needs a scenario like this, winning the popular vote by about 6.7% would definitely get him almost guaranteed to win the Electoral College vote. Even if he wins the popular vote by just like 1 or 2%, is more likely that Trump wins the Electoral College. It's how the Electoral College works that it happens like that, but it's very interesting to see. Now let's go to the weird and not so weird possibilities. Trump wins the popular vote, 14 in 100, not very likely. So he wins 25 in 100 elections, but 14 in 100 popular votes. So he has almost a 50% chance of winning. If he wins the Electoral College, doesn't win the popular vote. Biden wins the popular vote in more than he wins the Electoral College votes. Trump's wins more than 50% of the popular vote is even lower than him winning the popular vote. And Biden winning the 50% popular vote is lower than him winning the popular vote just compared to Donald Trump. It's likely we have 30-part candidates that get a significant amount, not a huge amount, but enough to make it so like this. Trump wins in a landslide, vote by double-digit margin, popular vote anyways, less than 1%. It was really interesting to see that Biden wins in a landslide 30% of the time. That's more of the time than Donald Trump wins the election in these simulated experiments. Really interesting to see. Trump wins the popular vote but loses the Electoral College. I cannot see that happening. However, I can see this 11% of the time that Biden wins the popular vote but loses the Electoral College. Less than 1% of the time, no one wins the Electoral College. I was checking out this yesterday, and this was a little bit higher, but 269 would be a weird election. If 2020 can't go down in history more than a tied presidential election also happening in 2020, 2020 would be the year with the craziest stuff happening. Trump wins at least one state that Clinton won. Obviously, that could happen. 39%. Biden wins a state that Trump won in 2016. It's almost guaranteed to happen. I know it says 90%. A Dalton guarantee. It's gonna be 100% in my books. The map stays exactly the same. I cannot see that happening. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are all leaning so far Biden that even if two of them are wrong, one of them's going to be right, and that's just going to already change the 2016 election. And the election hinges on a recount, 5 in 100. Really good betting odds. If I could bet on it, I would bet on the election hinges on a recount. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Florida, North Carolina, those are two very close states right now. And those are states that could matter a lot in this election. As we saw up here, Florida, 15.4% of the voting tipping point. Could definitely see that being a very close election. North Carolina sitting at a 5.2, even less likely, but I could definitely see both of those things happening. Thank you for watching. If you would like, please like and subscribe these videos. I want to make more content for you guys. The best way to help my channel is subscribing so you get and hit the notification bell so you get notifications when I put out new videos, and liking my videos. And if you would share them, I know not everyone wants to share more political videos with other people, but if you could, if you have friends, send it in a group chat. Please get my channel out there. I want to make content for a whole bunch of people. I think I have an interesting perception, and I want to share it with everyone. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.